Hey there, friends. Tired of managing symptoms and struggling for answers? This holistic podcast guides you beyond one-size-fits-all advice to uncover root cause health solutions. I'm Holly Jean Mullen, your functional nutritional therapist host. Drawing from over a decade of clinical and personal experience, I'm here to help you overcome chronic issues like thyroid problems, autoimmune conditions, hormone imbalances, inflammation, weight loss resistance, the list goes on. This isn't generic advice. It's a comprehensive, personalized plan covering nutrition, mindset, and environment. Tune in for practical education, expert guests, real stories, and coaching to help identify what's keeping you stuck. It's time to understand your unique needs and tap into your God-given ability to heal by honoring nature's wisdom. Your transformation starts here. Let's go. Hello and welcome to Real Health Transformations. On today's show, I am joined by Suzanne Gauldin, and she is an experienced dietitian. She is a nutrition educator with over 20 years experience in the field. And today she's bringing not only her professional expertise, but she is also bringing her personal experiences. And that comes with challenges that she will share with us with weight and self-worth. She champions a non-diet, weight-inclusive approach, which focuses on mindfulness and behavior change to help people heal their relationships with food, body, and self. Suzanne's work has included supporting over 2,000 bariatric patients, reinforcing the belief that true sustainable health comes from commitment and self-compassion and not quick fixes. So welcome to the show, Suzanne.
Thank you. I'm so excited that we get to do this together. Thanks for having me.
Me too. I'm so glad that we just randomly met months ago.
I know. And we both know how, God works in those random ways. So yes, I love it.
Maybe not so random.
I know. Right. Yeah. Just to us, maybe.
Yep. Exactly.
For sure.
Because we can't see the big plan.
That's right. That's right.
So you have an office here in the Tulsa area. You're in Owasso. And even though you and I have very different backgrounds and training and experience, I know that we share the same passion for wanting to help others. And I feel like the wellness space can sometimes be a competitive market, and not just in business, but also like a little bit personally within the market too. And I truly believe that fostering a collaborative community amongst practitioners, amongst other wellness professionals is really important because we all bring different and unique perspectives to the table. We have different experiences. And when we share those, it's really helping to elevate our collective understanding and our approach to health and well-being. So I'm glad that you are here. I'm glad that we're having this conversation. And I hope to have more like this and also more collaborations with other people within the industry as well.
Absolutely. For sure. Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So why don't we start by you telling us about your practice? I want to hear more about like what inspired you to get into this work and maybe some more of those personal stories that were mentioned in your bio, some of those challenges.
Absolutely. Yes. And, just to highlight what you said about collaborating, within the industry, in one of your podcasts, you mentioned, that you oftentimes get questions about how specifically you were talking about hormones, but how you really highlighted that every individual is so unique and the way that they need to be treated. And so even though we can look at all the information that is available to us online, really our I believe that even from a nutritional standpoint and in our health, that, we are as unique inside as we are on the, as our faces. And so I really love that. And I really feel like, unfortunately, traditional medicine is sort of leaving people without a lot of hope in their health because, traditional medicine was originally came around to treat disease and to be healed. People would come in with, sickness and they needed a treatment and medication. But now the world is traditional medicine can't respond to the lifestyle challenges that people are facing in our modern world, that stress and anxiety and isolation. And of course, we all know that depression and anxiety are all-time high. And there's only so much within the traditional medicine realm, within the constraints of insurance, that our doctors can do for us. And so oftentimes I feel like, in addition to with what I do from a nutritional standpoint, there's a lot of bias in the care that is given. And you combine that, with all of the other things I just mentioned, and people feel very attacked and just not heard. And again, without hope. And I think that's what drives people to seek those answers on the web, because they just don't feel like anyone is listening or truly sees them. And that is where my time in bariatrics, I've always had a passion about weight management, even way back, 10, 15 years ago. And have always been more drawn to a behavior management approach to weight control versus here's your diet plan, go for it. And when I was worked in bariatrics, which was really the highlight of my career. I was there for 6 years as a dietitian. There's really nothing as gratifying or satisfying as walking with someone and partnering with them their entire journey from, 350 pounds to 160, and seeing someone get their life back and their health. And unfortunately, I did also see that bariatric surgery is still a treatment. And if that individual was not willing to make the changes in those other areas of their life, then they would still end up 2 years postoperatively at a loss of what to do, because hormones all return to normal. And if you haven't made those changes, so, there's no statistic on, what the results of bariatric surgery are, because so many people will fall out of the program. But I'm going to loosely say probably 15 to 20% of people are actually successful after having surgery.
Really? That low?
Yes, it's crazy. And I think too, from a success standpoint, that's different for everyone. In America, more is always better. And it was always interesting to me that when someone would sit down in my chair, they would say, I would say, what is your why, for having this surgery? And it was always my health. I want to be able to get on the floor with my grandchildren. I want to have more energy. But then they would lose that amount of weight to where they could do those things. But then it became aesthetic. Then it was, oh, I just need to lose, I want to be even more, I want to be thinner. And so by the standard of bariatric surgery, the person was very successful. But it's just crazy that our diet mentality and the culture that we live in America, unless you're a size 6, then you don't have it right. You're not doing the right thing. Something's wrong with you. You're broken. And that was just, it's just such an unfortunate. And so kind of with my story in bariatrics, I, when we talk about a mindset change, and I was at a place where I was working so many hours. I loved my patients, and my days were 6 a.m. till 9 p.m. Literally, I would come home and chart. I would wake up in the morning and prepare. And I just was like, there's no place else I want to work, because there's nothing that is going to bring me as much joy as this. I've done lots of other things. And I found myself, trying to tell these people that would sit down, with me and say, I'm not sleeping. I don't have any enjoyment. I work too much. And I couldn't authentically share with them, because I wasn't being authentic in my own lifestyle. And I do truly give the recognition to the good Lord, who just opened up an opportunity, which was crazy. Crazy. He didn't stop it. And I ended up opening up my own business, and was able to jump back into my coaching at the same time. My husband and I moved to the country, and wow, like all of a sudden, this newer version of myself began to sort of like come out of, like this, that transformation you talk about. All of a sudden, it was it was like, I can't even believe that I get to do this kind of a thing, and I all of a sudden I could, my best friend had said to me a year, 2 years ago, what do you dream about? And when I was stuck in my job, with as much as I loved it, I didn't have any dreams because it was just wake up, go, 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 go. And now it's like, within the process of coaching and all the other things, my life has slowed down so much, and I do get to dream. I do get to think about how I want to fuel my body. I do get to think about, how I want to move versus what I need to do.
Right.
I don't have to get
Instead of
steps
just
in.
checking a box.
Exactly. Yes. So, I will say too, so in combination with, me just wanting a more authentic life to give my patients, I also realized more and more that I couldn't sit behind a desk and help people get to surgery and know that they were going to diet and do whatever they had to do to get to surgery, and not and then know that they were probably going to return back to the habits that they'd had before, or there was not, you weren't witnessing like a real authentic desire or want to change because of, again, so many lifestyle factors, right? It was just like, I got to get this surgery, I just got to get this surgery, and so I just couldn't continue in that because I didn't believe in it. And part of where God grew me in my time with bariatrics was I became very familiar with intuitive eating principles. I became very familiar with mindful eating, and all of those I began to practice, and all of a sudden I could see that food was losing its power when I was able to just appreciate other components of my health and food by actually appreciating it. So I just gave you a whole lot of talking. So do I need to stop?
No, that was good. You actually hit on a few things. I should have been taking notes because there are a few things you touched on that are good points. And one, where do I want to start here? When you talk about the bariatric surgery just being a means to an end and
Mm-hmm.
not dealing with everything else, the hormones, the emotions, the patterns, the thought process that goes behind what gets someone into that position in the first place. I think there's a discussion to have there around a couple things. One, I want to talk about the difference between obesity as a disease and obesity as a lifestyle factor. But I also want to talk about how you said the bariatric surgery was a means to an end, and it wasn't, and with the only like what did you say, 15 to 20% of the results lasting. There's a shift now to where we're using other types of processes. We're using the
Treatments. Yeah.
GLP-1 shots, and now those are very popular. I want to talk about the potential ramifications of that too, and people getting to where they are, but also not making changes. So there are several
Mm-hmm.
conversations I want to have in there, so you can pick where you want to start.
I know. Gosh. The thing that stands out to me the most is that when someone decides they want to have surgery, there's a whole program in place, to get them there. And it's all centered around the safety of the patient, right? So there's a lot of testing, and you just check the boxes. So essentially, we're laying the foundation. As we're talking about this, I'm seeing the correlation of we're just laying it. You go to see exercise, you see the dietitian, you go to see the therapist, you get your clearance from pulmonary and cardiac, right? So you check all the boxes, regardless of what your mental, because, and the hope would be that when you have that therapist appointment, or that they would kind of tap into, but really at that point, it's just testing to ensure that there's not some deeper psychiatric reason for a person not to have, or to be safe to have surgery, right? And we live in a free country. So, I mean, it's kind of like, we can do everything we can, but ultimately that person is going to go to surgery. So So I don't think in America, we just don't have a foundation around a lifestyle. Um, we are busy, busy, busy.
I was
And
going to say,
so,
yeah, we do. It's more, more, more.
yes, how much more can I do? How much busier can I be? And I mean, that in one nutshell is the biggest problem right now in our world. I
Yeah.
feel like. And so within that realm in bariatrics, there's no time to assess, to spend time with someone, and to, you know, um, because you know this, because you work with it, that person has got to be ready for that transformation.
Yes.
If they're on the pathway of, I just want to get the information I need to get myself to surgery so I can have my surgery. And I think when we touch on the medications, I have now been working with patients that are using those medications, and it's very much the same. You have a handful of people that really want to embrace some really important changes, but you have some people that are like, I just want to lose the weight. And so it's interesting when I was looking at the article that that we're talking about, that kind of the what I saw in there was bariatric surgery remains the safest way to lose a significant amount of weight. And I that stuck out to me because I feel like, because it's monitored, because it's a program,
I was like, that doesn't
because they're
sound safe at all.
I know.
Surgery.
I know, right? But that's what they're saying, because I think it's monitored. It's like someone's going to watch you. You're going to check the boxes. Whereas now with these medications, and with them being, compounded, you don't even really have to be under the supervision of a doctor.
No, I
Um,
feel like I see them on every corner. It's like, come to Oklahoma where you could get your semaglutide and your pot on every corner, and then go to church because that's
yeah,
what
yeah.
because that's what's right there.
Your injection, your smoke, and the church.
Yep.
There we go.
Hallelujah.
Stop and have some fast food on the way out.
Don't forget your Sonic. I guess it would be Brahms here.
Absolutely. Yes. I don't know which one. But yeah, so it's just interesting that, but I do want to say that another passion that evolved for me working in bariatrics for so long was the research that continues to show up, that yes, the stigma around overweight, and that it's always a behavior problem, when really the research is pointing more and more and more to once, and I feel like this is, again, our bodies metabolically are responding to a broken food, or not responding is what I should say, to a broken food system, a stressful environment where cortisol levels are through the roof, which no one can see, no one can really manage. So they just assume they're not stressed, to a convenience store, fast food, processed everything. So, and then what I believe, and, I think this is even so true with what we see now with ADHD, is that, I know that they haven't completely linked it, but with preservative in our food. And what's happening is that moms are eating this stuff, are living stressful lives, and are a part of all of this crazy life that we live. And then that's being passed through in the womb. And then our
Mm-hmm.
children are coming out with already metabolic challenges. And who knows too, because one of the other articles we were going to talk about was what happens in the home with our children, and the role models that their parents are for
Yeah.
them. So there's a metabolic problem. I do want to say that. And I do feel like, I don't know that the stigma in America will ever go away, that, this is your problem. But I really do try to, as much as I can, educate people to understand that once the body gets to a certain place, it's no longer because of the insulin resistance and from that metabolic. And I'm not saying everybody fits into that, but once the body gets to a certain place, it just no longer responds to traditional methods of weight loss. And so it is pretty, I mean, having these medications on board, if they were able to be used a little more discreetly within a program, really highlighting the changes, that we're talking about in lifestyle and nutrition and movement, then that would be really, really exciting. But one of the ways that I say and I share with people is that if you have depression or anxiety, and Holly, I don't know how you'll feel about this. I feel like we don't just have to pass out, sertraline to every person on the street, but there are some people that truly have a chemical imbalance, and you can get good sleep, and you can, improve your nutrition and exercise and know all the things. But if there's a chemical imbalance in place, then medicine may be what you need, right? And so I kind of say the same thing with obesity. You may know all the things and be trying really hard, but it's not going to change your metabolic structure. And so that's to me when you make the decision, okay, let's try this medication, just like you would high blood pressure medicine or, like I said, anxiety medication. So, but it's pushing upstream,
Yeah.
so yeah. So
And
does
there
that
there
kind of,
is a time of and place. And sometimes we need to have other interventions to be
yes.
able to get to the place to make changes. And a few things you said, like one, just talking on our culture of busyness. One example I like to use of that is how we're always told the Mediterranean diet is like the ideal diet. It's great in your fatty acids, it's fresh with vegetables and fish. The Mediterranean diet, it's ideal, right? It's ideal for people who live in the Mediterranean because their lifestyle is completely different there than it is here. You can put all Americans on a Mediterranean diet, but if we don't change the way we live, we're not going to have the same health benefits from that diet, eating fish and olives while we're driving around and meeting to meeting and scrolling. The Mediterranean diet is their life. They sleep in, they take long lunches, they nap in the afternoon, they slow down. Like food and dining is a enjoyable, relaxing
Yes.
experience. It's not done at your
Yes.
desk. And so it's not the diet. We don't look at all those factors. And you
Mm-mm.
touched on all these external things that play a role in how our body is metabolizing, how our body is responding. And I truly believe that weight gain, when it's not an a symptom of gluttony, it really is the body. I mean, even then, even if we are overeating, we put on weight as a way to protect us. Like our body is
Mm-hmm.
never working against us. It
Mm-mm.
is a protection mechanism. And you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned chemicals and stress and stuff in our food and stuff that's passed down from mom. And that all plays a role in how our body's responding to things. And whether or not we feel that stress, our body is taking it in as stress, taking it in as toxins and poisons, and we store those things in our fat cells. So if we're full of toxins and we run out of fat cells, we're going to make more.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so many other angles to the issue than just, oh, you're lazy, you eat like crap,
Right.
because that's not always
Mm-mm.
the case.
Mm-mm. You're so right. And just when you said that, it really, because you hear so much about inflammation, and insulin resistance. And, when you were saying that, about the body protecting itself, you're exactly right. It's doing everything it can to, insulin resistance is just the body's buildup, of too much of something,
Yeah.
right? And inflammation, it's just a reaction, to help get your attention that, hello, something's not right. So you're so right. Our bodies, and that is, again, the passion behind non-diet is people don't understand that our bodies, again, were always meant to survive. Cavemen
Yep.
days, we were always meant to survive. And so when people for decades and decades and decades have been dieting and putting our bodies in this state of deprivation that it doesn't understand. And so again, all of the things that come from that, I mean, it's amazing how, just health wise, metabolically, people just don't understand that you're literally, when you're starving the body, it's just trying to do everything it can to keep it alive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, and then we add a lifestyle that's crazy. So
Yeah. I have seen, like, I don't have experience in the bariatric world, but I do have several clients that use the GLP-1 drugs. And when we talk about sometimes we need interventions to get there, I have seen it quiet the mind and that constant food chatter and that stress. Like, I have not had a single client who has been in a position where they want to lose weight and are not so completely hyper focused and stressed on everything they eat, everything they do, and how it's going to affect them. And I've been there myself, so I know how that is to be constantly not obsessing, but it's always on your mind. And with these drugs, it quiets that. And
mhm.
it's like they just describe it as it just quiets all the noise and gives them the room to just breathe. And then
Yes.
the weight starts coming off. And then they're ready to make the changes. Like, and they're like, I like this. I can now focus on, okay, what do I need to do to now
Yes.
explore how I got here? What do I need to look at in my
Yeah.
lifestyle? And that's been my experience with my clients. I can't say that that's the case for everyone, but I love how you had the insight to step away from the long hours and just going through the motions to where now you can step back and be able to really be present with someone when that switch flips and to
Mhm.
then help them make the lifestyle changes. Because it is, I mean, if it's not something that you're used to, it is hard.
It's like a foreign language. It really is. When in my practice, I had such aspirations. I had actually a kitchen and I really wanted to do some mindful eating classes. And I actually did a class and actually did a luncheon somewhere. Sometimes you ever look back on something you did and you're like, I don't even know how I did that. It was so crazy. Like,
Too often.
I think the people that were a part of both of those two situations were like, this is so weird. She is so weird. I'm never doing this again. But I was very uncomfortable with it, but we only get comfortable when we do something, more and more and
Mm-hmm.
more. But really my takeaway from all of that is it's just a foreign language. Like, what? You want me to taste my food? Um, you want me to chew my food? You want me to think about my food? Like, you want me to ask myself questions while I'm eating? You
Uh-huh.
know? So yeah, and I really and it, and I'm just gonna, this was something because where I actually got my mindful eating certification from, they actually closed. The organization closed because they just weren't the funding. And I think it just speaks to the world that we live in. I just think people are like, I don't have time for this.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, I just think that's so sad. I mean, it had been open for like 20 years, the organization, had been doing things. And so anyway, it's just crazy to me. It's
Yeah.
like going upstream was what I realized. And I had no idea. And I look back on it too, but I think that I was in that place in my life that I wanted to open a business that I wanted, where I could rest, where I could stop, where I could, and I realized that even though I wanted to stop, no one else did. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway.
I will say, so when I first started, like when I was still in nutrition school, when I got my first job and it was at a gym wellness center, And my mindful eating classes or my mindfulness classes are the ones that no one signed up for. But when you talk about it within something else, those are the things that you say, or the insights that you share, where people go, oh, like things start to click. But it's like no one really understands what mindfulness is. It just sounds, oh, yeah, I don't need a
I
mindfulness. That's
don't have time
boring.
for that. Yeah, that's stupid. Yeah,
But
yeah.
when you
That's
practice
for
the
weirdos.
principles, yes, it's like, oh, that's woo woo.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But it is really foundational to everything. Like if you just pause, I talk about saying grace and how that, if even take the religious out of it, it's like whatever you need to do, just taking that moment
Oh
to
my gosh.
express gratitude and just become present before you eat, the smallest thing.
Smallest things. Yes. And I love that you said that, because that is the first foundational, one of the things that stuck. I have a chill right now. With you saying that, because every religion, I think even other religions, I never thought about in America, the Christian religion, that grace, saying a prayer before your meal, was to actually prepare your heart and your body for what was before you. Like I've always just thought of it as just as what we do, right? We just say grace. Thank you, Lord. But, Eastern cultures take 5 breaths, and they thank they think of all the people that touch their food, and what a wonderful treat this is for us. And I mean, yes. So I love that you said that. So true. It's the little things, like just stop.
Yeah. I You just reminded me. I just had a conversation with a friend yesterday who's so stressed out about eating. She's like, I'm afraid to eat anymore. I don't know what they're doing to the food. Everything's modified. And like, she has all this fear and anxiety around eating. And I just had to pause and remind her, well, one, no weapon formed against you will prosper. Like,
Right.
we'll just take that and, you know what, whatever. But your mind is so powerful, and what you're believing and thinking when you're eating, your body will receive. So if you're
Oh,
eating and thinking, this is poison, this is going to kill me, your body is treating what you're eating as poison. But if you're just saying, thank you for this nourishment. Another client, she said, well, sometimes we go through fast food and we don't say grace because I feel so guilty because I know it's not good. And I'm like, but you're still nourishing your body and you're
right.
still thankful for those provisions. Could it be
Yes.
better? Yes. But
Yes.
you're still receiving it from a state of thankfulness, and your body will respond metabolically to where your mind is as you're eating.
So true.
We totally got off course.
I know, but that's such good stuff, though. I mean, it really is. And, I've even had a few people that have some severe allergies that have stemmed from what I've discovered as, which is not off track, because we were talking about disordered eating versus eating disorders.
Yes. Okay.
And
True.
so I could tie into that. But I discovered that mind body connection, with a woman that has seemingly intolerances to everything, but when with working with her for 3 months, realized that a lot of this stemmed from neglect as a child, and it was her only way of getting attention, was to have some sort of ailment with her food.
Yeah.
And so what she's trained her brain is that if she wants it to be something that she can't tolerate, then she will not. And I believe it's very real. But
100%.
yeah, yeah. So to me, the difference is that I feel like most people have probably some sort of a disordered eating pattern. But I think anytime there's a challenge in the relationship with food, when food is used for something other than, or, than fuel, which is really most of us, I mean, honestly, but I think that's kind of outside of the realm of, what is a diagnosable, the traditional eating disorders that we
Right.
know about,
Right.
anorexia, bulimia. But I feel like there is a lot of disordered eating out there that stems
Yeah.
from all kinds of, it's amazing to me when I talk to women and, their moms put them on a diet when they were 8 years old, and just all of the disordered eating patterns that came from that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so yeah, it's pretty crazy. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned the article that I shared with you before our conversation, and it was just so our listeners know. So there was this study done, and it highlighted that parents' eating habits strongly influence their children's eating behaviors, as you just touched on. And so that does tie into mindful eating practices. Okay, we stayed
We
on track. Um,
circle it around.
but how we're raised, the environments in which we're raised, can have an impact on our relationships with food. And I think it's fascinating
Huge.
how the subconscious mind is shaped by what experiences we see in those first formative years, and the habits and the beliefs that our parents model become the groundwork for our future relationship with food and health and self-worth. And I mean, so many things, and the routines and the language and the emotional responses that we experience at home are going to create these deep seated patterns that we
Mm,
just carry with us through our lifetime until we can become present and aware
mm,
of them and see their roots.
mm,
And it's so hard to break those patterns because, like you mentioned earlier, like our subconscious is designed to keep us safe. Our body, like everything's wired for survival. And so if those foundations are laid very early, to be able to break those means we have to be so actively present and
mm,
aware and make choices that feel uncomfortable and that are hard, because everyone says,
mm.
oh, why can't I be consistent, why can't I do this? And it's like, because it's hard. It's
It
hard
is.
because you have to stay on it, but you can change it.
You can. Yeah, you can. And I think too, the hardest part of what I notice is that I think, I always feel like the scary fear is always is always the core. Whether it's someone's, um, so many times it's someone's career that they don't even love and they stay in it. And I probably associate with that because that was me. But it can be caregiving. It can be an illness that chronic, that just keeps that person paralyzed and feeling like they just have to stay, where they are. So
Because it becomes an identity.
yes. Yeah, for sure. And, back to what you were saying about, um, our families really mold, our whole ideals around the kitchen table. And, I think if I could give, any advice to parents that are raising children is to to raise them in a time where they are watching their parents be present, watching their parents maybe not have as much as the person next door, because it's really important for them to be home and be able to have dinner. I was flipping through one of my books because I looked at that study, and I pulled out a handout that had just all the beautiful reasons of sitting at the table and how it changes drug use, cigarette use.
Yes,
I mean, just from so when
it can
parents are
change the world.
oh my gosh. And parents are so concerned about what they're feeding their children. Don't worry about that. Just sit down together, face to face,
Yeah.
connect, and share a meal and talk about it. That to me is going to have so much more power than all the things that we're so focused on
Yeah,
with our food.
that is such a good point. And so many times, like when like you get a client, I get a client, it's overwhelming, all the steps and things that we need to go to do to get from where we are to where we want to go. Like
Right.
that could be a series of 100 different steps.
Yep.
And so when we can simplify it with that first step of, hey, don't worry about what the meal is. Let's just focus on sitting down as a family, because the health benefits of that alone are going to be powerful enough to roll over into other
Hmm.
changes and other benefits.
Hmm. And you saying that, I think of just creating space to just be present, with our families, with ourselves. I mean, I know you have to talk to so many women that, and I was one of those women. That's the crazy thing, is that was me. If you would have told me to take 5 minutes to just be present and to deep breathe, and I would have been like, you're nuts. I don't have time for it. So I'm grateful that God led me out of that. But I do think it's such it really is, it's challenging.
Yeah, I will say that's probably the one thing people ignore the most. They
Yes.
want the meal plans. They want to know the yes list and the no list of
Mm-hmm.
what to eat, what not to eat. It's like, okay, but that's not life.
Uh-uh.
Like, you're not going to live your life by a list. You're not
Mm-mm.
going to follow a meal plan. You need to know how to pivot and adjust and what works and what
What
doesn't. And I
doesn't?
also know that, okay, we might not always start there
Yeah.
either.
Yeah.
Like, you're not just going to automatically know.
Yeah. No. And again, it's just, I mean, everybody has their own eating style. And really, I say a lot of times, like spiritual growth, like financial growth, you never really arrive. It's an intentional effort. And my favorite word in my 50s is curiosity, because children love to be curious. But as we age, we either did it or we didn't. We either succeeded or we failed. And to me, it's so much more of just looking back and saying, even with food choices, lifestyle changes and choices, what worked and what didn't, what was good about this, what wasn't. And, that's where I feel like all those hundreds of steps, that's where coaching can be so helpful, is because it gives people the space to be able to think out in an area that they never give themselves time to think about. So
Yeah.
anyway, I'm kind of
Yeah.
getting off track there, but yeah.
No, I think that's a really good point. Like that, the curiosity, that's a great word, that
Oh,
childlike wonder, because we do, as we get older, like, we think we're older and wiser, but we get older and, yeah, maybe wiser, but we also just close things off. We're
yep.
like, oh, I did that. It didn't work. Instead of asking questions.
But why? What worked about it? You know?
Yeah.
And that's so much more, and I'm sure you know this. One of my, I love self compassion, if you've ever delved into that. But one of the things I learned is that positive thoughts that we have in our brain actually increase oxytocin, whereas negative, mean thoughts that most women carry with them cause increase in cortisol. The thoughts that we have can change our
Mm-hmm.
hormones.
Yep.
So it's crazy. I
So
mean,
don't be a
just
Debbie Downer.
right. And the one thing too, because I always feel like people say, oh, self-affirmation and all of that. Self-compassion is very different than self-affirmation. I feel like self-affirmation is making yourself convince yourself of something you think or want to believe. But self-compassion is saying, this is where I am. It hurts and I'm okay. This is okay for me to hurt. Lots of people hurt, right? Because we just want to feel like we're part of the bigger picture.
Yeah.
So
And
anyway,
I
I'm
think
sorry.
a lot of
Yeah.
times, like, we don't want to feel. And so,
Yes.
like, pain is not
Yes.
comfortable. And so
No.
that is why we turn to food. That is why we turn to
Yes.
alcohol. That's what distractions and scrolling. Because when you have to sit with how you feel and ask yourself hard questions, that is uncomfortable. But we
Yes.
can't get to the peak until we sit in that pit of pain
I
and, like,
know.
figure it out.
It's just part of life.
Well, I mean, that's like the rock bottom, usually I will say people usually don't look for me or working with someone like me, or maybe even like you, until they've tried other things and
Yeah.
nothing's working and they're desperate and maybe not necessarily at that rock bottom, but they are frustrated enough to be like, okay, I
Hmm.
gotta try something else.
Yes. But then I think even still, I feel like the culture in our world is just, like you said, I don't know that I want to go to the pain. I really want you just to give me the rules that I need.
Yeah.
And that's not the answer. And so I do feel like a lot of people, not a lot of people, but I do have a few people that I feel like just kind of, leave and feel like that this wasn't it.
Well, it's
I don't
another
want to do
box
that.
to check. I've done
Yeah.
everything that I can. I even hired
A
a
dietitian.
nutritionist, or,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's just a box to check. It's not that it's like, look,
I
see, I'm
know.
doing the work, but not really
Mm-mm.
showing up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I want to kind of wrap things up. Hold on.
Okay.
I have a final question for you. Well, actually, is there anything else like in the articles or like that we talked about before that we haven't touched on that you wanted to mention?
Well, I do actually. There's one thing in
Okay.
the article about the children. I thought
Yes.
it was very interesting how they categorized. And just for listeners, there were the avid eaters, the emotional eaters, the avoidant eaters, and the typical eaters. But what I thought was most interesting was the avid eaters, which are the eaters that respond to food cues in the environment and love to eat, and the emotional eaters, which eat for emotion. When children were raised under those type of adult eaters, their children did not respond to a well-balanced diet. I thought that was very interesting. So, whereas some of the other eating styles, the typical or, the avoidant, that didn't show up as much. So I thought that was very interesting. So when we raise our children with a lot of emotional ties and pleasurable experiences and probably let's go get ice cream because you're sad kinds of things, those children do not respond when we present them with a balanced meal. Because
Interesting.
I just thought that was such a like a highlight,
Yeah.
again, back to this, you know, kids are like sponges. I mean, they really just, they absorb so much more than we even realize.
Yeah.
I don't even know how I have grown children at this point with all the mistakes that I made.
Well, I think about things a lot, like what I've learned now, like in this work and how I did things when they were younger, like the things I would
I
change.
know,
But I mean, that's
girl.
where
I know.
self-compassion comes in.
Yes,
It's
absolutely.
like,
We gave the
know
best
better,
that we
do
could with
better.
where we were. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
So,
But
yeah.
yeah, just knowing that they're in that little program state when they're young and just the way you choose words and the way you respond
Yes.
and so
Yeah.
many things.
There's a
But it's
lot.
never too late to change.
Never, never at all.
Yeah.
Mm-mm. And kids will love you always. So
My babies.
I know.
Okay, so tell me what transformation means to you.
Oh gosh. I feel like transformation. Do you mean for me personally or for what I
Yeah,
love to
like if
see in
you
other
had to
people?
like define what like yeah,
Oh,
whatever it is. Like what is it? Because it means something different to everyone and
oh
like when
gosh.
you hear it.
Well, I loved how you actually explained it in your one of your podcasts.
Oh, did you
You
listen to
know,
the triangle square?
I did. And I think it's almost stepping out of the triangle and with that curiosity and remembering that, am I dreaming? Like just taking a check. I think when my friend asked me that and I said, I don't dream. If we're not dreaming, you know, that's where it happens. That's
Yeah,
the first thing we do. And like you said, what's your new identity? What do you see yourself doing? Like close the door, open it. Who are you? And then once you get that, you know, then you can start to take the steps to make it happen. But you
yeah,
got to find that internal, it can't be externally motivated. It's got to come from, but I think you have to get in that creative space with your brain because people just don't go there. But for me, it was just helping people, being present and serving my family and my church and with energy and not just checking boxes and every day waking up to, and I feel so grateful but it hasn't been easy. But it's far more beautiful to have the margin to have to do a podcast if I want to sit and read a
yes,
book, to just dream about what do I want to do next? I'm 55, but that doesn't matter, you know, like, what do I want to do? So yeah, I think it's just stepping back and really letting yourself just dream.
yeah. And dreaming is hope.
It
So
is. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, do you feel like when you ask people that question, I know in my own practice, when I look at people and say, what, ask them that question, they just stare at me like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't remember if that's the same episode where with the square and triangle, but
Yes.
because I
Oh,
did a 2-part, but I talked about like a lot of people can tell you what they don't want.
yes.
Very few people can actually tell you what they want because we don't sit and think about it.
And it's actually crazy to me that we talk about that, like, if you'll notice when you do ask people what they do want, the first place they go is to what they don't.
Because we're wired to notice negative. It goes
Yes.
back to that survival. That's how our brains are
Yes.
wired. We look for the negative because that's the threat and we need to survive.
Yes.
So it's just
Instead of,
natural.
and you know what? That's kind of ties into that scarcity mindset instead of that abundance.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it really does. Yeah.
And just goes right back to the competitive nature of our field instead of collaborative. It's all the
Absolutely.
same mindset. But
Yes. And I feel like, just to, if we didn't talk enough about that, I do think that, I tell people in midlife, it takes a team. Like, you're going to need a functional provider. You're going to need a traditional doctor. You're going to need a hormone doctor. You're going to need a personal trainer. You might need, a skin, whatever. It's going to take a team to get
yeah,
you through that, you know?
yeah.
And that's where that collaboration. And I think as in our field, we have to embrace that because of the strengths that we all, like you said, individually, we all have something a little bit different to offer. And we don't all, you have a different strength than I do. And so, it's just so important to get different people's viewpoints and hear some of the good things you need to hear over and over again. And, so
Well,
yeah.
and it's just part of growing and changing. Like
Yes.
when once you reach a certain goal, the person who got you to that goal might not be the person you need to get you to the next goal. And it doesn't mean that you need your whole team at once at the same
Yes.
time. Like when
Yeah.
I started, like I hit my rock bottom in December of last year. In January, I hired a trainer. Did I need a trainer? Maybe, I don't know. I could have started anywhere, but just starting with a trainer and building that habit of showing up for myself every day and committing to making changes,
Mhm.
that was the catalyst. And then I moved on from there. So it's like
Mhm. Mhm.
everyone starts somewhere different. There's no right or wrong answer,
Mm-mm.
and there's no set timeline, but it does start with you first identifying what you want.
Yeah. Yeah. You've got to have that vision. It's funny. We don't just go on a vacation and not have a destination in mind. Well, some people do, but most of the time we have a plan,
Mm-hmm.
and so I feel like, but we don't allot enough of that time for our own individual life plan, and understandably in different seasons of our lives, that's challenging with children that are small and as they're growing older.
Yeah,
But,
yeah,
you know, but you're right. It really begins with where am I headed? Where am I
yeah,
going? And then we figure out how to get there.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for this conversation and sharing your insights. I think your perspective on nutrition and holistic health is really important, especially when it comes to understanding our relationship with food. And I think this has been an eye opening conversation.
I
Hopefully,
love it.
our listeners agree. So, where can listeners go to connect with you, learn more about you and your work?
Well, probably the easiest thing would be my website, and that is journey to success lifestyle nutrition.com. It's a whole mouthful.
Okay. I'll
Um,
put a link in the show notes.
um, and yeah, so that's probably the best place right now. I do have
Okay.
some, Instagram and Facebook, but haven't been super active on that. So anyway, so yeah, that's
Okay.
probably the
All
best
right.
place.
Well, thank you. And
Yes, thank
as
you for the
we,
opportunity.
yeah, we'll wrap up. I'll just remind our listeners that wellness is a journey
Mm,
and it's woven through our daily choices, the values that we uphold in the community we foster. So it's not just about personal growth, but I think there's an important aspect for inspiring and supporting those around us as well. So thank you for joining us today. Take
So
care of
much.
yourself, those you love, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to Real Health Transformations. I appreciate you joining me. If you found value in what we covered today, I'd be grateful if you could leave a review on your podcast platform of choice. It really helps spread the word and just helps me get the show out to more people and lets more people find us. And if you'd like to submit a question for me to answer on a coaching episode or to apply to be a live guest on a coaching episode, check out the show notes on how to contact me for that. The show is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. As always, please consult your trusted doctor or medical professional before making health and lifestyle changes. I'll catch you next time on Real Health Transformations.